You have to understand politics. As long as I can understand the language, it's fun to listen to these people talk. Okay, this man right here, Trudeau, I think his name is something like that. It's hard to watch him talk. It's hard to listen to him talk. It is tough. Okay, because this guy, he's at the top in Canada. He's at the top. He's Gavin Newsom in America. Okay, if Gavin Newsom were to become president, God, we're looking at Trudeau. Okay, Newsom might got a little bit better hair, but that's about. I mean, these two are. Listen, God, Canadian people are not happy. All right? I know people think I'm crazy. Europe people, when I say they're not happy, what I'm saying is they're not happy with the liberal view. They lean in more conservative, which is fine. It's nothing bad. This is life. This is the cycle. Liberal, we're leaning away from them because it's crazy. I mean, we can't even candidates really. Good luck, Canada.
We recognize that there are systems and institutions that need to change across the country. And that's why from the very beginning, we stepped up with policies, new policies, stronger policies and processes to support every survivor, everyone who comes forward, because nobody deserves to work in a workplace where they are being discriminated against, where they are being harassed or hassled. We have been unequivocal about that. My leadership has been unequivocal about that. Yes, these problems continue in workplaces across the country, particularly in the military. That's unacceptable, which is why we've taken even stronger measures. It's unsatisfactory to have to say, we're relying on process in this. We want to just be able to have easy answers.
Ms. Paul, what's your response to that?
With easy answers, you have to fall back on process.
I have said before, and I'll say again tonight, that I do not believe that Mr. Trudeau is a real feminist. A feminist doesn't continue to push strong women out of his party when they are just seeking to serve. And I will say their names tonight and thank them. Thank you, Jane Philpott. Thank you, Jody Wilson-Raybould. Thank you, Selena Cesar-Chavez. And I'm here tonight thanks to the work that you have done. I believe that if there were more women on this platform tonight and in previous years, that we, in fact, would have better laws in our military. We would have childcare at this point. We would have many of the things that we need. I am the only woman other than Elizabeth May to be on this platform in the last 18 years. The Liberal Party has never had a woman lead it. I think it's time for the party to examine.
I think, Ms. Hall, you'll perhaps understand that I won't take lessons on caucus management from you. I think what I will keep focused on is making sure that our first woman finance minister has moved forward on
Mr. Trudeau. Mr. Trudeau, I'm sorry, that's time. We have to move on.
Canada's voice has been absent, Mr. Trudeau. We have not worked with our allies on Huawei. We have not stood up for the 300,000 Canadians in Hong Kong. We've not fought for the two Michaels and put pressure on the communist regime. We've not stood up for human rights. Sir, you did not show up for a vote declaring a genocide towards the Uyghur people. You didn't show up. Canada is the country that was leading the fight against apartheid. We created the UN Human Rights Code. We should be leaders for our values, sir. And you've let the Michaels down, and we have to get serious with China.
If you want to let the Michaels and get the Michaels home, you do not.
Great. Canada does the same tactic America does. I mean, liberals are always making when I say I love America, I don't mean that I'm disregarding the things that I mess up on or Americans or Canada stuff. Or these people make it just like if you love something, you bad. It's just like America. Maybe the whole world is. Maybe the whole world is really about the love. And Trudeau really not. All these people on the stage.
not simply lob tomatoes across the Pacific. That is what Mr. Harper tried for a number of years and didn't get anywhere. You need to engage in a sophisticated way with our allies every step of the way.
You have to take the same position on
and that's
Huawei,
exactly
on
what we
steel,
have done
on
every step of the way.
on cyber security, Mr. Trudeau. We are out of step, and our allies are wondering where Canada's gone. You started.
There's the lady that's doing all this right now. She said, all right, a few times. A man, let's not talking. Ladies, how they just say excuse me. All three men kept talking. They keep talking. Mayor Adams did that too. In a interview on the Breakfast Club. You should.
As Prime Minister saying you admired China.
Mr. Blanchet, did you want to get in on that?
Throwing tomatoes might not be the solution, but I would submit humbly that doing nothing might not be the solution either. The Mr. Trudeau's record on human rights is not perfect. We might name the two Michaels, we might name Uyghur in Xinjiang, we might name Taiwan, Hong Kong, we might name Catalonia and Mr. Puigdemont, we might name the worst of all,
Mr. Blanchet.
Badawi being still held in Saudi Arabia because Canada wants to sell weapons and military supply to Saudi Arabia, which is unacceptable.
Okay, gentlemen, one at a time.
The Parliament voted unanimously to give citizenship to Raif Badawi. Nothing has been done afterward.
Let's talk about the cost. The cost of inaction is an entire town of Lytton being wiped out by a climate forest fire. The cost of inaction is forest fires and flooding and heat waves that mean Canadians lose their lives. The cost of not acting means a young woman I met in Hamilton who looked me in the eyes and said, what's the point of me pursuing my education? What's the point of me finding a partner or even starting a family when I don't know what type of future I'll live in, let alone my child? That's the cost of inaction. That's the cost of Mr. Trudeau, who had 6 years to do something about this.
Again,
it's not 2 years. It's not a small mandate. 6 years, and he failed you. And it cost all of us.
Mr. Trudeau.
When we talk about a climate crisis, we have to deal in facts. And one of the facts I need to correct right now that everyone is laid into is we have not missed any of our targets. We are on track to exceeding our targets. And it's important that we are on facts. Secondly, I do have a question for Mr. Singh. We need to talk about science. We need to talk about experts. We agree on that, you and I both. So how is it that the experts that have rated our plan on climate to be an A have rated your plan to be an F?
I rate your track record an F.
No.
You have 6 years.
You don't get to rate. Experts. Why did the experts give you an F on your climate plan?
Let's talk about right now. Let me respond to this. Let's talk. You're talking about the future. Let's talk about right now. You had 6 years, and you've got the. Let me finish. You've got the worst track record in all the G7 after 6 years. How can people trust you?
Why didn't you put forward an
ambitious Mr. Trudeau, then Ms. Paul, then Mr. Blanchet.
I don't accept that, first of all. I don't accept that at all. We've got a bold. After the tragic finding of graves in Kamloops, Cowessess, and other former residential school sites, we offered to work in a bipartisan fashion on calls to action 71 to 76. Those are related to former residential school sites. And we need to act faster. I know Mr. Trudeau cares a great deal about reconciliation. I know we all do. But this is an issue where we have to act. We can no longer say that we recognize the calls to action. We need a plan to achieve them. And what I'm proposing is a plan that builds partnerships, that builds governance, that has Indigenous leaders, incredible ones like Jody Wilson-Raybould, to allow us to actually hold ourselves to account. All parties, all future governments. This is the biggest scar in the history of Canada. And we have to tackle it not just with good intentions, but with a good plan to deliver for all Indigenous people.
When we called the national inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls after years of governments avoiding doing that, we ensured that we brought the truth forward. And then we worked with Indigenous leaders groups, Indigenous women's groups to co-develop the action plan that we are now fully funding so we can get justice for the victims healing for the families and put an end to this ongoing national tragedy. It will take a lot of work by all of us, but we are walking this road in partnership because we know it needs to be done and there is much more to do.
But Mr. Trudeau, sadly, and this, I don't take any pleasure in this, the calls to justice are out there and you haven't acted on them. And I meant it when I said you can't take a knee one day if you're going to take Indigenous kids to court the next. That's not leadership.
Mr. Singh,
That's
you
not going to
love
make things
that
better.
line about taking Indigenous
not
kids
a
to
line.
court. It's
What?
actually not true. We have
Trudeau,
committed to
say
compensating
that?
those
You can't
kids
say
who went
that.
through that.
Listen,
And what's
seriously, you
more
can't
than
say
that,
that.
this is important,
No,
Mr.
you
Singh.
can't say you're not
When
taking them
you
to
talk
court when you're
about-
taking them to court.
When you talk
There are
about
kids out there
how
that have been
assess.
fought by you in court.
Leaders,
You
I
can't
would
say that.
actually remind you the question
that.
is about violence
Yes.
against
Listen us.
Indigenous women and girls. Let me recenter you on that.
I appreciate it because he can't continue to say that. That
Well,
doesn't make any
and
sense.
Ms. Pearl, I will say again, I said this last night in the French debate, this is why we need more diversity in politics. This is why we need people to be, who are most directly impacted by issues, to be able to speak for themselves, because we are drifting off into things. We have only dedicated 2 minutes to talking about how we are going to bring true justice to Indigenous women in this
Ms.
country, if we can
Ms.
stick
Pearl,
to the topic.
What will you do as Bloc leader to address systemic racism in your own province in Quebec and also elsewhere in Canada?
First, never underestimate the weight, the sadness of those dramas.
Oh yeah.
Second, I acknowledge, I recognize the existence of systemic racism in June 2020. And then what happened? It became a political tool against Quebec. It became a tool to say Quebec is this and that and racist and xenophobic and all of that, instead of opening a discussion, trying to find solution, consulting experts, discussing with the First Nations themselves. It became this white society against this other one, white society. We build nothing. So the words became toxic. I'm
What are you
absolutely
going to do? Where
open
do
to
we
the
go from
idea
here then?
of discussing all of that on a quiet stage without this aggressivity, being aggressive as this debate has become.
All right, Mr. Blanchet, we have to move on. Your next question, Melissa.
This question's for you, Ms. Paul. Canada has more children in government custody right now than at the height of residential schools. New legislation, child welfare legislation, actually takes the onus on and puts it on the First Nations communities to bring their kids back, cleaning up the mess that Canada has created, essentially. And those children are going to have to be brought back to all of those same problems that still exist, that were the grounds for apprehension. What would you do in the House of Commons to make sure that poverty and trauma issues are addressed?
Thank you very much for that question, and absolutely, we mentioned that not that long ago in one of our statements that the residential school system had been replaced by children in care, and that this was just perpetuating the legacy of trauma. It really comes back to what I said before, which is that the Indigenous leadership is there. It is ready to guide all of these processes. We have all of the recommendations we need. What we are missing is political will. What we are missing is those who have been in power for a very long time, making space for new voices and diverse voices. I actually had to pull my jaw up, which just dropped, when I heard what Mr. Blanchet said. I invited Mr. Blanchet to get educated about systemic discrimination. I extend that invitation again. I would be happy to educate him.
It's nice to want to educate
This
me.
is my time, sir.
It is.
Thank you.
So nice time to insult people.
That was not an insult. It was an invitation to educate yourself.
This is leader direct questions,
There
Melissa.
should be some
Mr.
decency in
Blanchet.
this debate.
I
Since I'm many minutes behind everybody else, there should be some
Mr.
decency
Blanchet,
in
you
the
have had every
debate.
opportunity to
It's your
jump in an open
responsibility,
debate,
not mine, but something's
and I
There you
am
go.
fulfilling my responsibility, sir.
There he is. There he is. He came out.
Bernier,
There.
your chance to go.
Oh, I got you. It's tough. It's tough. It's tough.